On today's episode, Liz and I welcome Lesli Doares to the show, and we talk about important lessons for husbands that is part of what she calls the Hero Husband Project. From communication tips and marriage blueprints to common mistakes and compassion, we discuss practical ways we can improve our marriages and manage our emotions. Lesli Doares brings over 20 years of experience working with individuals and couples as a coach and therapist. Combined with her personal experience in an almost 40-year relationship with her husband, she has created a paradigm shift in marriage so it can become a space where both partners feel respected and included. Lesli is well known for her direct but compassionate approach. Gentle but totally honesty is what you'll get. Her commitment to her marriage and children led her to crisscross the country a couple of times until the LA girl settled down in the South. She brings this fusion of cultures to both her business and her life. She's also the author of Blueprint for a Lasting Marriage, How to Create Your Happily Ever After with More Intention, Less Work, and her book, Being a Hero Husband, How to Make Your Wife and You Happy. We hope you enjoy the show. Hey friends, welcome to another episode of the Stronger Marriage Connection podcast. I'm Dr. Dave here at Utah State University alongside Dr. Liz Hale, our licensed clinical therapist, psychologist. We're grateful that you're here with us. We are sharing the best we have in research and resources along with tips and tools to help you create the marriage of your dreams. All right. As a husband for 26 years and counting, I'm still very much learning how to be better, and I'm always searching for tips to improve. Liz, I certainly haven't arrived, if you will, as my wife clearly knows, that I'm still working on it.
Pretty close though, Dave, I'm sure.
Yeah, right. I've got a long way to go. Well, today's guest is a marriage and family therapist all the way from North Carolina. She's a men's marriage coach and the creator of the Hero Husband Project. Welcome to the show, Lesli Doares.
Thank you so much for having me.
So grateful to have you. Looking forward to our discussion. I love that title, by the way, the Hero Husband Project. So can you start by sharing how you ended up helping husbands and give us the scoop behind the Hero Husband Project?
Well, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and have been for about 20 years. And most of that time I have done couples work. And through that process, I realized that most of the men that come to me, and for a while, about 50% of my calls were coming from men. So obviously I was doing something that they found interesting. And it really was about trying to figure out how to rebalance the relationship. There's, the women's movement, I think, was necessary for a lot of things, but it kind of left men in this place of, I don't know what my job is anymore. And there's a lot of support for women around relationships. In fact, there's actually a myth that women are better at relationships. That is not true, but society kind of believes that, and men believe that. And most of the men that I have dealt with are what I call good guys. They are, and they want to be great husbands. They love their wives. They love their families. They want this to work. But they don't really get the kind of support that they need. And so that's kind of how I came to this, because I think if we are wanting to have successful marriages, relationships, we can't ignore 50% of the population.
Yeah. Amen. That's right.
There really isn't enough support for husbands. You speak my language, Lesli. I hear you. And I think that we often hear that men should focus on their wives' happiness, right? If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy kind of thing. Happy wife, happy life. We hear some of those. But you say there's also some downsides to that. Give us your take on that.
Well, yeah, there's some downsides because, I always go back to, I don't know if everybody remembers the movie Jimmy Neutron, but it's this movie where all the parents are taken away and the kids are just having this field day that nobody's in charge and they get to eat candy and then they realize, oh my God, this is not healthy. This is not good. We want some feedback. We want somebody to be paying attention to us. And so this is one of the things when it's happy wife, happy life, it completely upends the relationship, right? It all becomes about one person, which leaves the ground open for resentment for men. But also part of the problem is if I'm only focused, if it's only about one person's happiness, that person becomes in charge of everything. And then they get a little bit resentful that they're the ones having to make all the decisions and telling him what to do. And so she actually loses respect for the man who just turns into this yes man and is just waiting for her to tell him what to do because he's so terrified of her being upset in any way. And it's just not a healthy way to be. And, it's really about the loss of respect that she has that really puts an end to that happy wife, happy life, because it's like, stop that. Just cut it out.
Okay. So that's interesting. So she'll lose respect for him and he will feel resentful towards her. Did I get that right?
Yes. And then this is also where the concept of her becoming controlling comes in. Mm-hmm. If he never gets a voice in anything, if it's always her way, then that, and that term is a real, is a real poison pill for a marriage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That relinquishing control. Boy, that's not easy, but it's so crucial for us as women, right? Like you said, for there to be space for both. We need both fully present.
Right. I mean, to me, if both people's needs aren't being met, I mean, and I'm talking about overall, not at any one particular time, because sometimes one person's needs are going to take priority. But overall, both people's needs have to become part of the needs of the relationship. And if it's only one way, like I said, it just imbalances things and it won't work in the long run.
Yeah. Well said.
Mm-hmm. I feel like sometimes though, men are, I don't know, maybe kind of feeding this and making some mistakes, or maybe just don't know what to do. Or do you get a sense of a pattern, maybe of mistakes or common mistakes that we as husbands tend to make in marriage? And what have you seen that we can do better?
Well, I do think that one of the biggest challenges, and this kind of goes back, and I know that this is a loaded position, but I'm going to take it anyway, that there are biological differences between men and women. I have a son and a daughter, and I can tell you that is very true. And part of, just the natural tendencies are for men to provide and protect. And we sort of need to expand what those two terms mean because they're not what they used to mean. But when the wife is unhappy or disappointed or something, the man actually feels like he has failed, that he is not doing his job. And so he wants, and this is kind of where the fixing things come in, is because I don't want my wife to feel that way. And he takes it on as his personal responsibility that she does, even if it has nothing to do with him. He doesn't want her to be upset or bothered or whatever. And so he's trying to fix things, which a lot of women will go, I don't need you to fix this. But that's part of his wanting to provide and protect her. And so it's kind of, so there's that kind of gets in the way. And then one of the other things is many, many women, myself included, can overtalk our husbands. Especially I deal with a lot of men who are very, engineer, science, brain, very logical based guys. So one, they're trying to find the logic in the emotion, or they're trying to apply logic to emotional situations. Will not work. Any man who's tried that knows that. But also being overtalked, sometimes they need time to think things through before they respond. And, women are like, go, go, go. I want an answer now. Blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about this. And the men get overwhelmed. They shut down. They get accused of stonewalling. They're not stonewalling. They actually just are overwhelmed by the amount of information they're being given. And they can't respond as quickly. And so that's another place where I think men struggle. And I think we're not giving them enough room or enough tools to be able to learn how to have these conversations so that they can equally participate.
It's interesting, Leslie. I was just having this conversation yesterday, in fact, with a husband, and he said almost word for word exactly what you said. He said, sometimes my wife and I'll be talking about something, she will go, and then I will be silent, and she'll be like, "What? What do you think?" And he says, I just need a minute to kind of process some of this. He wasn't trying to stonewall or give her the silent treatment. He literally was trying to process this without feeling flooded or really to think about this. And so I can agree that everything you just said, yeah, sometimes men just need to, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed, or that was a lot, or like, okay, you've been talking, for all the things that I've done wrong for 10, 15 minutes. I need to pause here and process some of this.
Well, and I also have an issue with all the things that he's doing wrong. I mean, now that's not to say that there aren't things that could be done better. But we all do what comes naturally to us. And so when we bump up against something that we don't understand, there's this automatic pullback, defense, try to overcome this other person's position, as opposed to going, let's get curious about this. You do it this way. I do it this way. How interesting. What do we want? I mean, my husband and I had this years ago. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I like to go as quickly and directly as possible to wherever it is I'm going when I'm driving. My husband grew up small town South. He likes to meander the back roads and stop at all the signals. And so we would get into these little snarky things in the car because I would say, well, turn here. And he goes, I know where I'm going. So we finally had to come into whichever one of us is driving gets to pick the route. Good. And if we need to get there quickly, I drive.
I love it.
And it's been working for 20 years. So, but it's that kind of thing. It's just different.
Right. Mm-hmm. Good for you. I like this. So when you were talking earlier about men maybe just needing a little bit more processing time, is that true? So that's really a message for us as women to either slow down or just say, give it some thought and, we can talk about it again tomorrow. Or what's the message for women, please, on that?
Well, I mean, a lot of this comes from not being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So whoever is more uncomfortable with the unknown, with the just sitting and waiting, they're the ones who are going to push for a fast response. And that's frequently the women. One, because they frequently are the ones who are bringing the topic to the table. And that's something else that happens is I may have been thinking about this for a week or a day, and I have all my thoughts in place. And then I come to the table and I catch you off guard. You have no idea that I've been thinking about this. And I bring it to the table and I want a solution. And you're kind of like going, where did this come from? And so it's being able to really slow conversations down, which means we might not get an answer
as quickly
right
as we'd like. Yes.
And, I joke that the only thing that requires an immediate answer is, does the doctor perform emergency surgery? Everything else, we've got time.
Well said.
But we get uncomfortable with that unknown. So, I tell me yes, tell me no. Don't leave me hanging out here in the middle because I don't like that.
Yeah. So stretch a little bit, right? Stretch in those areas until we feel comfortable. Yeah, I like that. You suggest for husbands to develop a marriage blueprint. That sounds interesting. Tell us more about that, please.
Well, I've come to this from a couple of different places. Here, going back to biology, right? Here's the problem. We meet somebody, we're physically and emotionally attracted to them. We fall in love, which those of us in the business know that's all very much a neurotransmitters, but, meet, mate, procreate kind of thing. And we make these big decisions. And then we kind of step into the boat and have no idea where we're going. And it's the only aspect of our lives, I think, that we do that with. I mean, most of us have either had some kind of skills training or we've gone to college. We wouldn't just open up a business without having some idea of, does somebody want this product or whatever? There's plans every place else except in our marriages. And there are very much common areas that if we had a plan for our finances, if we had a plan for, do we want children? How many children? How do we want to raise them? Where do we want to live? How do we want to live? These things that I call just guardrails for your relationship. I was having a conversation with a client this morning who, gets into trouble, quote unquote, because he goes out and he forgets to pack a lunch and he goes out and buys lunch. Well, if they'd had a financial blueprint, a plan, we would know, is this something that we want happening in our lives, right? But everybody's kind of doing it by the seat of their pants. And when they run into a challenge, it's like they're starting all over again from scratch. Recently I heard something about a 1 degree rule that pilots talk about, that if you're 1 degree off course, which is not very much, after 2 hours, you're thousands of miles off course. But because they have a flight plan, they course correct. And so I kind of just take that whole idea and say, let's have a plan for our marriage. So that we're actually talking about the things. Because a lot of stuff, I remember having a conversation with my mother one day about how many clients that I'd had who'd never talked about having kids. And my mom goes, well, your dad and I never talked about it. And I'm like going, oh my God. It's like,
because just the assumption, right? The assumption that we will, I guess. I don't know. That's what your mother was saying. Is there something magical or maybe your favorite part of a marriage blueprint? Is there a common, maybe number one suggestion you have for men that might be listening? What should be on the blueprint?
Well, definitely lifestyle. What is it that what do we want our lives to look like? It encompasses everything. Like I said, it encompasses finances. It encompasses children. It encompasses friends and family. How do we spend our time? What kind of, I had a client who he was a salesman, and his wife actually hated that he traveled so much, but they never talked about it. But if they'd had the blueprint, they would have gone, oh, this job doesn't fit our lifestyle. If you've got somebody who wants to sell everything and travel the world, that's not going to work real well with somebody who wants to, be stable and in one place. And these are the kinds of things that when you talk about them, you go, oh, and you have to actually have the conversation about whatever this is. And, so the 5 areas that I talk about most, actually now 6, is finances, friends and family, communication, children, intimacy, and running of the household. Because running of the household can cause a lot of problems because we're not talking about it.
Is that the lifestyle part? Where does lifestyle fit in?
Lifestyle kind of
overall. Okay.
All.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, but literally who's doing what around the house?
Lifestyle kind of sounds like values almost too, right?
Oh, yeah. Values are a huge part of it. And, values, beliefs, expectations, especially unspoken expectations and unagreed to expectations are what I call, the bugaboos of marriage. Because, well, I have this expectation that you're going to do this. And it's like, I'm glad you have that expectation. I'm not having anything to do with it.
Yeah.
But
We don't have the
and if
same
there's-
expectations, right? Somehow we just don't have them. They don't always line up.
Nope. And so the solution to that is to actually have conversations and come to real agreement, which means not agreeing to something you don't agree to.
Yeah, that's right. I think sometimes, even for men, and I guess maybe some of this is stereotyped, but I know there's some research behind this. Men are maybe a little bit more hesitant to bring things up, to communicate about something, or maybe just, I thought we did communicate, or something along with these challenges. Communication. Talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges, and what are some keys to productive communication that the husbands should master?
Okay, so there's several of them, but the very first one, and I think that this is critical, is learning to listen to understand, not listen to respond. Because a lot of times when we're having conversations, we hear enough to go, oh, I know what the rest of that sentence is going to be, right? Especially if you've been with somebody for a while. And so I'm not even really listening to what you're saying. I am preparing my response back to it. So what happens is we're talking past each other. We're not talking to each other. And I always have to clarify that understanding does not mean I agree. It just means that I could take what you say, turn to a complete stranger who did not hear the conversation, and accurately represent your position. That's when I have understood what you're saying. I don't have to agree with it at all. That just means I now can address it in a correct way. Another really big component of good communication is timing. When do we have this conversation? I have a couple of hard and fast rules. Never when either one of us is emotionally spun out, because that's going to be heading towards a fight. Not when we're tired. So that don't go to bed angry is like, well, deal with your anger. Don't have a conversation about it, because that's not a good idea. And I can say, I hear what you're saying. I understand this is important, but now is not the time to have this conversation. I'm not prepared to have this conversation. Now, if somebody says that, the second thing to that is, how about we come back to this at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning? And then 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, I'm at the table ready to have the conversation with you. But timing again, I might not have thought about this. I don't know how I feel about this conversation. You're bringing it up out of thin air, and I'm supposed to participate. I need a little bit of time. So those are two critically important things. And the third one is I statements. Never telling your partner what they think, feel, believe. Don't do that. It's like, what I heard was, or when I heard this, I felt this. It's really not that people don't do it, but it's really hard to argue with somebody else's perspective. I've never known anybody to argue somebody out of their perspective.
We'll be right back after this brief message. And we're back. Well, let's dive right in. You said this, these are great tips, so hard to implement, especially in the heat of, which is one of the rules, right? In the heat of any emotion, or I'm feeling attacked, and instead of listening to understand, right, I just feel like, I'm just listening to react, to get back at them or to defend myself. And so it really is about some of this. Take some breaths, right? Have compassion. Try to truly understand. And if I am getting heated, say, hey, I just can't, I can't do this anymore.
Gotta take a break.
I got to take a break. Yep.
And there's another component that I think trips men up, and it's this right versus wrong, right? My husband, my husband tells this story years ago when he was at work, and some guy who just recently got married comes into the break room, and he was like sputtering, and I was like, what? And they go, my wife and I were having an argument, and I knew I was right. And all of the men goes, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
And most people, we're not disagreeing about right and wrong. We're disagreeing about our viewpoint. 2 + 2, I'm sorry, new math, it's always going to equal 4. That is not, that's not open to discussion. But if it's 68 degrees outside, is that warm or cold? In my case, it's the limit of my warmness. But for other people, that could be, and so we're not arguing about facts, we're arguing about opinions, and that's really where we get stuck. So, letting go of the right and wrong.
Yeah, nice. When it comes to intimacy, Leslie, what do men typically miss, or what do you want to instruct them on most when it comes to their wives?
Well, again, going back to biological differences, and these are, again, about survival of the species differences. But men have a very different, I don't want to say necessarily expectation, but they have a different way of being intimate. And one of the things that a lot of men don't understand is how much both emotional safety and emotional connection matter to women in order for them to open up themselves to be physically intimate. And those are not, men generally don't have to worry about their physical safety. They don't worry about going out at 11 o'clock at night by themselves. Any woman in her right mind is always aware of their surroundings if they're by themselves in a parking deck or whatever, because we're not physically safe. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the first things that men really need to understand, is that there needs to be this sense of both physical and emotional safety, right? If we've had an argument or, unkind things have been said, I might not feel emotionally safe with you. And it's going to be almost impossible to become intimate. The other part is the importance of emotional connection, that I feel like my partner sees me and hears me and values me on an emotional level. And the truth of the matter is, men do want emotional connection. They crave it just as much as women do. They just come at it from the opposite end. And so a lot of times men are focused on the physical because that's the doorway in for them to the emotional intimacy and connection. And they can they can get too caught up in, when was the last time we were intimate, and they end up focused there, which I get. It's just the cart before the horse. We're never going to get where we want if we don't build in that time. And it takes time. And this is one of the things that in today's world, time is probably the most precious commodity. And if we are not spending quality time together on a regular basis, we're going to become disconnected. And then as we become emotionally disconnected, the physical intimacy doesn't necessarily feel very good. It just feels like one more thing on my to-do list. And that's not what either people want if they want a really good marriage.
Mm-hmm. And I agree, Leslie. And I even have talked to, even on this podcast, even more important than time, I think, is attention, because you can spend time with someone and actually not paying attention to them. I think attention is the key to relationships, and then that builds the emotional connection. Now you can't you can have attention and time, but you can't you can spend time and not have attention, but you can't give attention and not have time. And so I think that all of that, those together, who you're with, what you're doing, and it starts way earlier in the days, the interest in them, it's the gratitude, the kindness, the sensitivity, the warmth, the openness, all of that leads to then emotional and physical intimacy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I love what you said, because a lot of times, especially with men, although it's not just with men, we're in the same room. We're together.
Yeah, time.
But we're not paying any attention. But I'm on my phone, you're on your computer. It's like we might as well be strangers at the cafe. There's and it doesn't take a lot of time. And it's the small things. It's not the grand gestures. It's the everyday. And Dave, you said it. It's like just kindness. It truly stuns me sometimes how unkind couples can be to each other. They treat the grocery clerk better than they treat their partner.
Yeah. In fact, so we talk about these, small little things. Do you have, our listeners, they love, practical tips, things that they can start doing today, right now, whether it's husbands or wives. Do you have some simple little things that can make all the difference?
Absolutely. And the first ones aren't from me. You'll recognize them when you hear them. It's 4 times a day. When you first see each other in the morning, you greet each other. How do you leave each other when you make sure that you're saying goodbye, make sure that you're spending a little bit of time. When you come back at the end of the day and before you go to bed, those are 4 touch points. Just please and thank you, gratitude, right? Saying to your partner something at least once a day about how much you enjoy that they're in your life. If you can do 3, that's great. If you go with Gottman's 5 to 1, you've got 5 positive interactions to counterbalance 1 negative one. You want to create this large love bank account. How can I make deposits into my partner's love bank account? Because when we've got a huge balance, then the little dings to it, we can handle. We can even handle some bigger issues. But if we don't have a good balance, and that's just built by acknowledging somebody, when you get up to go get something out of the kitchen, ask your partner, hey, can I get you anything? It's the simple things that really go by the wayside because we get complacent. We take our partners for granted, but actually verbally saying thank you, or I so appreciate, how you dealt with that situation with my mother. These things where it's like, wow, you noticed that I did that. That makes me feel really good.
Yeah. Small little things.
Mm-hmm. And actually, when I think about Gottman, I love that you bring that up, Leslie. It's, it's in conflict that it's 1 to 5. When we're not having conflict, it's 1 to 20. So I love all these suggestions you're making that it really has to be on that heavier side of kindness. I even heard Gottman say, when I just asked him, what's the biggest difference between these marriage masters and marriage disasters that you're finding in your research? And that's just what he said is kindness. Just very simple. Anyway, do you have an example of a couple, let's say, that you taught these tips and ideas to, and how did it go? Gosh, we want to hear the inside scoop.
Well, I'm going to give you an inside scoop of when I was working with just the husband. Okay. And because there's this belief out there that you need both people. You don't. Michelle Weiner Davis years ago used to do a talk about it takes 1 to tango. Because one person doing something different can really change the relationship. And I got on a call, with him, one of our meetings, and he goes, "You're not going to believe this." And I said, "What?" And he said, "She's using the communication skills that you taught me." And I said, "Uh-huh." He goes, "But she doesn't know what they are." And I said, "You have been using them for 3 months. You have modeled them. She's now following through," which meant that they were no longer having arguments. They were no longer on the verge of divorce. They were actually, she had been, at the time that he contacted me, she was ready to walk out the door. And now she was feeling so close with him that they were talking about having more children. So it was like,
nice.
And I did sort of just kind of laugh because there is this belief that she has to participate actively. She's participating passively because he's leading the way in how to do this more effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow, that's great.
We do become kind of a wife mirror or a husband mirror, don't we? In a sense, things do rub off on us. I think that's the magic. And if they do have another child, they're going to have to name that child Leslie right after you.
But yeah, but that's true. We do influence each other for better and for worse.
That's what I often say, Leslie. Yes, we do. We're powerful partners one way or the other. Absolutely. Where can our listeners find out more about you and the great resources you offer?
Well, probably the best place is my website, which is www. That was three W's theherohusbandproject.com. I also do have another website, which is foundationscoachingnc.com. But my focus really is wanting to rebalance the relationship and really let men know that they matter.
I love it. They sure do.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll be sure to put those links in our show notes, Leslie, so our listeners can easily find those. Hey, before we let you go, we like to ask our guests a couple of questions. The first one is, what do you feel like is the key to a stronger marriage connection?
The key there, I really do believe that the key is to be open to what our partner brings to the relationship. They are not carbon copies of us. They're not supposed to be carbon copies of us. And I should have written this down. I cannot remember who said this, but one of my favorite quotes, I think it's by a man named John Barth, is marriage is our last best chance to grow up. And that's what, I'm with this person. I'm having to think differently. I'm having to problem solve differently. I'm having to include somebody. And that really forces me to take a look at what I'm doing and to be open to a different way. It's a growth process. It's really not about personal happiness. Yes, we want to enjoy our relationships, but happiness is a fleeting thing. We can't be happy all the time. And one of the things that is really, I think, good for society is that we grow as people.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, Leslie. I love that. Love that answer. I love that. It's about growth and not necessarily my own happiness. Is there a takeaway message? We call it here on the podcast our takeaway of the day. What's a message that you hope our listeners will remember from our discussion today?
Well, I don't, that relationships are only natural up to a point. And then they need some skills. Love the Beatles, but love is not all you need. You actually need to know how to work through these things, because everybody, love is something that needs to be attended to. You need to feed it. You need to make sure that it's, because it can ebb and flow. And if we want to keep it going, we actually have to focus on it. And if we just leave relationships to chance, they're not going to work very well.
Yeah. Thank you. Wonderful. I love it. Liz, what about you? What's your takeaway of the day from our discussion with Leslie?
Copious notes here. I'm just so inspired. There's just not enough support for men. So Leslie, I'm so glad that it's you. I love this whole idea of the hero husband. because it's true. They want to be heroes and we want them to be our heroes. So there's certain things we as women need to do and need to stop doing in order to make room for him to show up as a husband. And I love your thought for husbands about the physical and emotional safety for women. If they could really focus on that, we'll respond favorably. Yeah. Dave, and you, what's your takeaway on our time together?
Yeah. This has been great, Leslie. I think there's some things as husbands that we can do better, more of, less of. I think one of those for me is to listen past the edge of the voice or the tone. And I think beneath the problem is pain. So looking for the pain beneath the problem, the pain point. Is there fear? Is there frustration? Is there an unmet need, perhaps, that's beneath all that? So listen past that instead of reacting and trying to get defensive. Listen to what's hurting, what is underneath all of that, and how can I respond to that instead of respond to maybe the edge or the tone in the voice. So super important. Leslie, this has been very helpful. We thank you so much for taking time to come on to share this information. And I echo Liz's sentiments there with making resources, being that resource for husbands, the Hero Husband Project. So wonderful. We invite everyone to go on to check out what she's doing, because we can all be a little bit better. So Leslie, again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing these principles and tools and skills with us.
It's been a pleasure, and I love talking about this. So any chance I get, I'll do it.
We love it. Well, thanks so much. Well, that does it for now, friends. We'll see you next time on another episode of the Stronger Marriage Connection podcast.
And remember, it is the small things that create a stronger marriage connection. Take care now.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a second to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel at Utah Marriage Commission, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. Be sure to smash the like button, leave a comment, and share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and interact with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Life and Facebook at Stronger Marriage. So be sure to share with us which topics you loved or which guests we should have on the show next. If you want even more resources to improve your marriage or relationship connection, visit strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, e-courses, in-depth webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producer, Rex Polanis, and the team at Utah State University, and you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission.